you're pretty good. You could actually make it in this business. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, whoa, 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 whoa. I didn't come here to be, I didn't even entertain the idea. And so for some reason, it showed to me that if you actually sort of try to overcome your fears, you're going to go on a pretty interesting journey in your life.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy and life with yours truly, Michael Kahan. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Today's guest is an absolute delight. He's funny, wise, deeply inspiring, and has wonderful and uplifting stories. Joe has a beautiful perspective on facing fear, and the way that he explains it is something that really stuck with me. You can see why he's had such a long career. He's thoughtful, self-aware, and knows exactly who he is. It all makes for a genuine and wonderful conversation. Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Joe Flanigan is an actor and writer. He's perhaps best known as the main character, John Sheppard, in STARGATE ATLANTIS, which went into international syndication with 100 episodes. He additionally wrote for the series as well. Joe's also appeared in other television and movies, including Birds of Prey, True Calling, Thought Crimes, CSI Miami, Woman's Murder Club, Warehouse 13, Fringe, Six Bullets, Major Crimes, Dawson's Creek, Providence, Profiler, and General Hospital, to name a few. Joe can also most recently be seen in multiple episodes of the third and final season of Apple TV show See, starring Jason Momoa. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about STARGATE ATLANTIS, odd cameo requests, being shy and facing his fears, rejection, doing many pilots before STARGATE, sticking to your guns, someone stealing his script, integrity, honoring your instincts, plus plenty more. Before we get into this epic chat, I'd love it if you would share the podcast around, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill. It really helps the podcast grow and helps ensure I can lock in amazing guests like this one. Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Maybe from what we were saying before, we could start here. I know we were talking about conventions before, and I saw that you're also on Cameo. Is there like a common request that you get?
Well, I mean, most of them are for like birthdays and things like that. But I'm surprised how often people ask for words of like, you know, positive words of encouragement, things like that.
Yeah.
People are very frank about the problems they're having, and then they'll say, "Can you give me some suggestions?" And then you get into some really, I think, tricky areas about advice that you're giving
Yeah, of
to
course.
people.
It's on camera as well. You don't know, you're on the spot somewhat as well. Do you take that as a compliment, or you're like, oh, legally, what if I say this? What happens? Am I going to get into trouble here?
Well, I do take it as a compliment, and I take it seriously, and I'm very cautious about what I tell them. And I always try to do it from my perspective, what works for me. That way, I keep my immunity in it. But I've seen so many people fall into this kind of vague, kind of amorphous title of life coach, and they're extolling expertise on all sorts of subjects. And I think to myself, if it works for people, it works for people, but it's also like the Wild West of bullshit on a lot of levels. Um, and so I love to give words of encouragement, but some things are very touching, by the way. There'll be people like, I lost my husband in 50 years and I'm
Whoa.
by myself, and my dog just passed away, and I'm feeling a little lonely, and can you say something? And you're like, wow. So I'm touched that they want me to say something, and usually the feedback I get is that they are very appreciative of it. So if it helps, fantastic.
That's very kind. And also, out of all the people on Cameo, they've gone to you for advice. There must be something about you that they feel they can share in this.
Or they might be very desperate. You never know.
That's true, but there are a lot of people on Cameo. And it's kind of like crazy that someone will go to Cameo for that. It's probably cheaper to go to a therapist, like for one session potentially. So I say it as the highest compliment. And there's something about you that people, it is very bizarre to do that on Cameo.
Well, I'm telling. Well, science fiction fans are of a particular nature in the sense that they're incredibly loyal. But you also have to remind yourself that, like, when you become like a public person, you're becoming a public person with a certain kind of, you're extolling certain kind of qualities. They may be written into a character or whatever. I don't know. And if you're reflective of those qualities, they assume that those are your qualities, and they would like to get close to those things. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, you know.
I find it really fascinating. I think we'll go back to what you're saying before in terms of how some people can't differentiate the character to the actual person. And I had one example that
Yeah.
springs to mind. I think he played like a assassin and he would kill people. And people would either message him like "kill me, daddy" or like "shoot me," or he'd be at an airport and people would say like "shoot me." And he's like, "You can't do this as an airport at an airport." And he said this would happen all the time. And people would like cannot differentiate. Well, some people can't, and that's always blown my mind. Have you shared like similar?
I think if that gentleman was a truly committed actor, he would just shoot those people. Um,
Yep.
People just, I think most people distinguish reality. They're having fun with it.
But
Um,
they can, but it's just sometimes when you, from my hearing from other people, they can, but they also can't realize, and they think that they go back into that character, or they're not even acting, and they've just been put in this weird world, but it's still them in this world. I just don't get it.
yeah, well, I'll tell you. Okay, so this was just interesting. Especially, it used to be a small screen, big screen kind of world, and now everything is streamed. So essentially, everything is a small screen world. Um, and television had this interesting role in people's lives where it was on, often on all the time.
Yep.
And people were, I would be in people's living rooms, right? And they'd be cooking or doing something. So they become comfortable with your character. They feel like your character, they know your character incredibly well.
Yep.
And they feel comfortable with that. That's not the same thing they feel with a movie star. A movie star
Yeah.
is like bigger than life sometimes, and seen in these spectacular kind of things. And so I think for some reason, television stars have been more approachable in general than movie stars.
Interesting.
And it has nothing to do with the attitude that the actor has toward anything. It often has to do with comfort and familiarity. Um, and so, having said that, people come up to Jason all the time too, but, you know, how can they not? Like, he just stands out. No matter where the guy goes, he stands out. It's what makes no difference.
Exactly. I always just found
Yeah.
that so
Yeah.
bizarre to me. And I'm sure also you've done a lot of conventions over the years as well. I'm sure you've seen it all as well on top of Cameo and convention. Is there like a general weird theme of what people ask outside of asking you for life advice? Or is it generally like pretty?
I think that, a lot of people want to collect the weirdest stories that happen to them, and there are always weird ones. But I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised how normal most people really are in terms of their desires and what have you. Um, it Here's my theory on science fiction in particular is it often deals with themes of empowerment. There's like a bully and then a kind of savior slash vigilante or somebody. And those themes are very popular. And there are a number of people that maybe relate to that are in science fiction fans. They feel like they might have been the kind of bookish, nerdish people in class that might have gotten picked on or something. And so this concept of empowerment, against the bully is something that is something they really relate to. And I think that that, and the same thing with the superhero
Yeah.
stuff. Um,
And also
and so,
recognizing that can be you as well. Like there's that aspect of us, that hero, that head.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I think a lot of people that, you find out they call them the geeks or the nerds or something like that. They relate to that stuff, you know, and I can say, yeah, there's always going to be a share of people that it might be socially maladjusted people. But the truth is, what I find is people are very sincere and genuine. And my job is
Oh,
just
cool.
to make them feel comfortable and make them feel like they, aren't wasting their time or money. I go out of my way to make sure I'm not full of crap.
And that's
There are people that, yeah,
no, but that also comes across in your cameo as well, especially when you receive like life advice. You could just be like, you can do it, kid. Like that's there's a lot of integrity there. And it's nice to hear because I don't know much about conventions and Comic Cons. I've had a lot of guests that have gone there and they've all said similar
yeah.
things to you where it's like people just want to like play and have fun and meet someone that they've seen on screen. And it's generally like quite a awesome experience. There is one thing on that, the energy levels. How do you manage that when you're at a Comic Con and convention? A lot of people, a lot of excited people, long days. Is that something that do you crash afterwards or pretty easy for you?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I'm surprised that it's not asked more often. It I find it to be exhausting on a level that only maybe a politician on like a campaign trail may feel,
Mm.
because um, again, my feeling is I want to be present for every person that walks up, and I can't just check out. So that, having to be present for that many people is taxing.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. It's taxing. Um, and then there's another group of actors out there that get energized by it.
Interesting.
Like, yeah, and they live for this sort of attention. And so they can do it all day long. And then when they're done, they don't shut off. They're like, blah, blah, da, 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 da. And I'm always interested in that. That's
Same.
kind of an interesting thing, and it's not my experience. My experience is my experience is not that at all. Um, and yeah, it's interesting. What I do say, the most fascinating part of, yeah, literally having been all over the world
Mm,
signing autographs, is the similarities that we all have.
that's awesome.
And how science fiction in particular sort of transcends cultures. I mean, every culture in the world has kind of looked up to the stars and kind of always fantasized about certain things. So that theme alone is universal. And then it's just amazing to me that we're so similar,
Mm,
no matter what culture we're in. That and yeah, there are always going to be differences, and for those that have traveled a lot, I can discuss differences all day long. But I'm really amazed by the similarities,
that's
and
awesome.
I find it very heartening. And I almost want to sometimes shake people when I have to listen to news and deal with political stuff, and I hear the easily described others, the others, and I'm like, there's no others. There's no others. There's us, and that's it. There's no others. The young mother trying to get across the border, legal or illegal, is the same person you are. You're just in a luckier circumstance than she is. We're all just and I think trying to, if people could understand this a little bit more, I think it would go a long ways for us all to be getting along. And I have to say, I am very, very heartened by the World Cup. Um,
Yeah.
and I heard this great quote, which is, the World Cup right now is proof in real time that if it wasn't for our political leaders, we would all get along perfectly fine.
That is great. And I love your
Yeah,
worldview as well. It's very uniting and empowering. I don't like
yeah,
that person's another. We're all team humans. That's a great
yeah,
take. I was also
yeah,
thinking about the first time you went to a convention as well, was just when you started Stargate. I think they filmed the
yeah.
day before. What was that like doing your first convention after that?
Well, okay, so that was actually the San Diego Comic Con,
Oh, that's the biggest
and,
one.
and San Diego Comic Con I put into a slightly different category because when I go to San Diego Comic Con, I don't go to sign autographs. I go to promote a project on behalf of the network or the studio.
Gotcha.
And so it's a part of your professional obligation. And it was mind-boggling. I had done a lot of television, and I just assumed, well, I'm doing this show in Canada, and we're going to have to wait a while for it to get popular. And they said, no, 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 we're going to go down and we're going to promote it at Comic Con. I said, we've only had one episode on the air, and I think it was like literally the night before,
It's crazy.
and we did well, the very well on terms of the ratings. But that I was like, how is that going to translate into a bunch of people migrating to Comic Con to see us?
Of course, especially that time gap is
So
so small.
I was extremely skeptical. And so I'm like blowing it off, thinking, whatever. And they go, yeah, Joe Flanigan's here this. And you walk out to stage, and it's like, there's like 8,000 people in this wall to wall and standing ovation. And I thought, okay, this is really insane because what's happening here is that Stargate SG1 had a fan base, and we basically just won over that fan base.
That's awesome.
We did. And so you have to be incredibly grateful to Stargate SG1 because I don't think any other show
I've
could
never
just
heard
go
of
on the
that.
air. Yeah. And it was also, it really tests your capacity to be in front of an audience and talk. And there's a funny story because when I helped cast Jason Momoa on this show. I was a big believer in him. The minute I met him, I was like, whoa, that dude there's a presence. Like, I would love to have him on the show. And interesting enough, not everybody felt the same way. And I thought to myself, well, I actually think, I, I think the guy will be a movie star. I don't know. It just occurred to me in my head. I was like, I think he'll be a movie star. And yeah, and we brought him down for his first Comic Con, and we got there, and I said to him right before we go on stage, I go, yeah, it's gonna be a little weird. You know, I don't know if you've experienced. I don't know if you've ever walked on stage and been in front of this many people, but they're gonna ask you a lot of questions. But just chill; it'll be good. We got up there, and he just went like this, and he went behind me, and he goes, "Dude, you have to answer questions for me. I'm not talking. There's no way."
Oh, that's
And I
hilarious.
thought to myself, and I said to him, "I go, dude, you're gonna learn." And not only is he cut to him hosting Saturday Night Live and stuff, he clearly has gotten over that issue.
That is so interesting that
Yeah,
he's an actor who's performing and then to be so shy. I've heard this quite a bit on the podcast as well, but
yeah,
that's
yeah.
quite an extreme example where, to be that shy as an actor in front of people.
That's why I became an actor.
Yeah, was this
Because I was shy.
I've been thinking about this actually for a while. You did the neighborhood playhouse, and there were Meisner people
Yeah,
there, and everyone there
yeah.
wanted to be an actor, and you didn't necessarily want to be an actor. Can you tell me about the audition process? Because that sounds like the most terrifying thing on the planet.
Well, I'll tell you, I was working at a thing called Interview Magazine in New York. Pretty interesting magazine, started by Andy Warhol, and I was working for the art director, and I loved being downtown New York, interesting, fascinating cultures and subcultures, artists, musicians. But before I know it, I was laid off. And one might argue whether I was fired or laid off. But I think, in my recollection, I want to say laid off, but I might have just been flat out fired. And I was out of work, and I had a neighbor who was an actor, and he always seemed really happy. He was like, doing all these things. And we did not live in cheap apartments, were not cheap. And without making money, I didn't know. This guy seemed like he never worked. And I said, "What do you do?" He goes, "Well, I'm an actor." And I was like, "Well, what does that mean? Actually, I don't know what it means." Because I just go. He did a lot of commercials,
Yep.
and that was lucrative for him. And he said, "Hey, you want to try it out?" And I said, "Not really, but I'm between jobs right now, and I have to figure something out." And I did not want to do it. I had to think about it because I was like, "No way! This is not my cup of tea. I do not stand up in front of people and do things. That's not my deal."
Wow.
So I really thought, I went back in my head, and it started sort of like late in high school when I became sort of a little bit self-conscious and shy. And then in college, I found myself, I would drop out of college courses if I was asked to get in front of class and read a report
No
or something.
way. Like fully like terrified. It was wow.
Won't
Okay.
do it. Yeah. And what happens to people, I think, psychologically, is when you avoid something, it snowballs into something far greater than really what it is.
Yep.
So that's what I was dealing with. And by the way, stage fright is in fact one of the most common phobias people have, because it's always
Yeah.
it has larger psychological baggage than most things.
Yep.
Is the fear of being on stage in front of people. Anyway, so I go to I go to the neighborhood playhouse, and and I actually think I'm going to have a heart attack. Now this is funny because those of you who are shy out there know that everybody goes, "Oh, he's shy," and then there's another level of shy, which is like, it's a cardiac like level shyness. Like you think you could easily have a heart attack. Like your heart starts pounding, you start sweating. This is uncomfortable for you. You need to avoid the situation. And I knew that as I got into this class, I had to get up in front of class and do a scene with someone.
Mhm.
And I am with some, the Meisner people who are pretty exacting. The neighborhood playhouse is considered a pretty, proper acting school,
Mhm.
but they were very tough. And people would get up in front of stage, and they would be like, "I'm just going to tell you something, honey. You should go back to Kansas and find a job on the farm because you're never going to work in this business." No, they thought they were doing people a favor, because they were like, you're going to get heartbroken and destroyed in this business. It's not going to
Oh,
work for you.
so is it
Yeah,
more like
they
we'll crush you now so you won't be crushed for the next 10, 15, 20 years?
not really. No, that too, but that's if they even think you have the possibility of making it.
Okay.
After they've decided you might make it, they're like, "Okay," and then shut the fuck up. You're not going to be a leading man. You're short and you're fat. Get used to it. Yeah.
Holy crap.
And so, they were real. They were very real about stuff, and they were tough. And so I wasn't really concerned about that per se, because I was like, well, I don't want to be an actor, so I don't care what he's. I just want to get over like my shyness.
Mm.
And I got up and did this thing, and I thought for sure I'm going to get carried out on a gurney.
Oh my God.
And then before I knew it, it was over. I don't quite know what happened. It seemed like I got all the words out. And he laid into the girl that was I did the scene with, and ripped her apart like he likes to do. Ripped her apart. I don't believe anything he did. Why are you even in this business?
They could not
And then
find
he
out.
turns to me. He turns to me, and I'm like, "Oh, he's gonna lay into me." But hey, I'm alive. I didn't have a heart attack. I don't care what he says. And he goes, "You're pretty good. You could actually make it in this business." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, whoa, 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 whoa! I didn't come here to be. I didn't even entertain the idea. And so for some reason, it it showed to me that if you actually sort of try to overcome your fears, you're gonna go on a pretty interesting journey in your life.
Agreed.
And those fears may change over time. You may have certain fears at 15 that are not the same at 45 and so forth. But you know what your fears are. We all personally know what our fears are. And to be in touch with your fears and to try to overcome them is almost going to, you know, guarantee an interesting life, if
I,
you ask me.
I
Yeah.
I couldn't agree
Yeah.
anymore.
And so by just absolute bizarre nature, I've sat and said to myself, I can't believe I'm on a set getting paid money to be an actor in front of a camera that for a show that goes around the world. And like I just never even thought about this. And it cemented this concept in me that said you have to push yourself. Always push yourself to different things, you know. I don't know if I believe in destiny per se. Somebody probably could convince me there is a destiny. I don't know. But I know that if even if you had a destiny, you're going to have to meet it halfway. That means you're going to have to try. And so it sort of gets into this concept of failure because I don't totally understand the concept of failure sometimes because I only look at things like it's a meter of learning. There's harsh learning.
Yeah.
I'm sure that goes toward the failure zone.
Yeah.
And then, but there's always learning. So to fail, and by the way, to be an actor, you know, most people probably I don't know how many auditions they have for every job they get, but
So
it's
many.
disheartening at best. So you know, you that is a it's almost a job in failure, you know, and I think it's an interesting way of looking at it. And I've always been able to kind of separate myself from failure and depersonalize it a little and look at it and try to learn from it and then talk about it. And then it's really interesting.
I agree.
I said this to my son. I have three wonderful sons, and I said this to my youngest son, who was he had a friend, and his friend wasn't getting invited to the same parties he was getting invited to, and he's like, Dad, I really want to go to these parties, but my friend's not getting invited to them. And I said, then go, don't go. You never abandon your friends. And more importantly, that this concept of failure and sticking your neck out is going to pay off um, tremendously. And those who don't experience rejection, I'm not sure they even truly know themselves. I don't know that you were ever going to know yourself until you felt fully rejected.
Agreed.
And and so what I learned was, I said to him, I said, you know, I understand at your age, you look at some people for their strengths. Like, look at that guy, he's the quarterback and he does this and he's got that girlfriend and all that. I said, as I've gotten older, what endears me to people is their problems. It's their what you would call weakness. I wouldn't call it a weakness.
Mm.
I would call it their peculiarities or their vulnerabilities. And I'm always like, I tend to be more endeared by that than I am people's strengths at times. Um, because we all have our vulnerabilities. And I'm not sure you can have a meaningful relationship with anyone without, you know, mutual acts of vulnerability.
Definitely.
And vulnerability by its nature can lead you down the road of so-called failure. But the truth is, we know that that doesn't mean anything.
I wrote down about 20 points as you were saying that. That's amazing. And it's
Yeah,
you're speaking my language. I agree with you. And that's also why I love an actor, because you get up, you perform to sometimes a large room or small room. You might not know anyone. You have to be pretty vulnerable to actually put yourself out there. And you're
right.
probably not getting the role. And then you keep on doing that. And sometimes you never get the role. And then sometimes you do get the role. And that is terrifying. Just to be able to do that, the actor understands the word failure or rejection better than anyone, because that's pretty tough. And there might be periods where you're getting no work, which every actor on the planet's been like that, and then you still keep on going up. I'd love to know like your take kind of on maybe the rejection side of not getting roles and still, you know, pushing ahead.
Well, there's something a little bit easier about rejection of acting role, because very often it will come down to I've had rejection that really hurts, where somebody say he was terrible, to rejection that's meant to be like a compliment, like, oh, he's too good looking for this role. And so you're like, oh, really? But the odds are that there's a whole host of qualities that you're bringing forth that may not be the right combination of qualities that they want. So it just doesn't, it doesn't. And then you get past to the point where those of us that are kind of working actors that, like, are known in the industry, and it's not like you're walking and they don't know who you are. And then you have another set of baggage, which is, he's always doing the science fiction stuff, or he does rom-com, and he doesn't do comedy, or he does too much comedy, and so there's all sorts of things, and they're out of your control. And you're dealing with people in general that lack imagination. They're looking at a tape sometimes. Sometimes you walk into a room, they're looking at a tape. And so you have to provide as much as you can to overcome their limited imagination. And you try it, but I guarantee you, actors that have worked for a long time will always tell you, like, nobody thought I was good at comedy, and then I got one shot, and now I'm the comic of the year or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think most actors feel like they live under a constant kind of wave of underestimation.
Oh,
There's so many good actors out there. I mean, there really are. And so I've always said to people, when you're lucky enough to be successful and working, just know that, yeah, you're bringing special qualities to things, but you're also really fucking lucky, because they could go with so many people.
Yeah.
And, it's when I hear somebody kind of extol their own particular talents over the sheer luck of the process, it sort of irks me a little. It irks me a little.
I
I did
get
a
that as
soap
well.
opera once. I did a soap opera once. It was after my house had burned down in this fire, and I had to stay in LA, and I couldn't
General
find things in
Hospital?
LA. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, well, in my head, I'm like, soap opera. Soap operas are what you do when you start out and all this stuff. I had all these absurd, like, head up my ass theories about. And I go to that set, and I mean, I had 30, 40 pages of dialogue some days. And
That
I looked
is
at these people and I
terrifying.
was like, well, also, the arrogance that I brought into the situation of thinking, looking down on a soap opera, when these people often are doing something far harder than I was. And they're also dealing with material that is not very good. So they're dealing with a lot of material they have to remember, and it's not very good, and they have to sell it. And they don't like to do reshoots. Like, you can do it and do it. And if you say, hey, I didn't like that, let's do another take, they all look at you like, you want to do it over? You know,
Is it like time is
you know,
money? Get on to the next scene. Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. So I was really impressed by the quality of that. And so a lot of us actors know that sometimes the irony, and it's a tough irony for a lot of us, which is, the better the material, the easier it is to do. And so sometimes you get these people, they're great actors and they get good material, but you're like, come try to do the bullshit I do, bro. you know?
I think that,
um,
yeah.
yeah. So, and a movie star gets to shoot 2 pages in one day.
Yeah, and then like
I mean,
30
they got all
different
the time in the
takes,
world to get it
angles.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't know how you. I've done extremely limited acting. I'm not an actor by any means, or even when I'm just because I do screenwriting, or just like reading my scenes and trying not to look at the piece of paper. I don't even know how you can do more than like 3 pages, and to do more than that in front of people is crazy to me. I don't know how, and I know even if you get it wrong, it's something like General Hospital. They're like, yeah, whatever, it's good enough, and you just move forward. That's
Well,
just
it's like, but you got to get certain things right, because if you
yeah,
don't get it right, you're screwing the other actor up.
yeah,
So remember that, you know, you can piss off a lot of people if you're not getting your lines right. But
yeah,
what I do, and by the way, memorizing is a muscle, and this is the thing people ask the most: how do you memorize all that dialogue? Memorizing is a muscle, so I figured I can memorize like a page a minute if I really have to, just about.
wow,
But I'm really good at doing it on set because I can do memory markers. Like I say this in the chair, and then I say that at the end of the table, and then I say that walking out the door. And so I can memorize things, and place a location to them, and it makes it a
wow,
lot easier.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tying back to fear and when you went up on stage as well, I think that's amazing that you had the goal of just working on your shyness. Was it did it become a problem at your life at the time? Like, for example, I did improv comedy, and I'd say
Yeah.
half the class over time, they said they were terrified. They could not talk, sometimes in groups of to large groups of people, or one was like a marketing executive and couldn't do like board meetings and things like that. And they all went up, put their hand up, and said, I need to work on this because it's actually impacting my life. And to see them
Mm,
after the end of the program was just brilliant. I felt like a proud parent,
yeah.
even though a lot of them were older than me. Was that kind of the
Yeah.
goal? Or were you like, I'll just see what acting is?
That was my goal. It was just
Oh, nice.
literally, I had no ulterior motives to be an actor. Um, and, let's put it this way. When my friend suggested, hey, do you want to try being an actor? And he sent me to his agent, and his agent wanted me to read a monologue. I was like, I can't read a monologue. I don't even know how to read a monologue. And I read this monologue, and I was just horrendous. And she said, look, you're very green. You're going to have to study acting. You have a look that might work commercially, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of put me, but it was strictly like I had nothing going on at the time. And I had gotten to a place where, you know, I was hiding. I think I was hiding from things, you know. So I started picking jobs and scenarios that required less and less of me as a person and my presence, and that felt safer. I was even, I did a lot of painting at the time, and I said, well, I'll just be a painter. And I was terrified at the idea of having a show and people asking me questions about my painting. Um, and I could not tell you why it was like that, because I was not like that when I was really young. It didn't happen until I was like 16, 17 years old that I started to become self-conscious. Don't know why.
That's
I
very
couldn't even
interesting.
tell you. Yeah,
It's
I couldn't
and
tell you why.
I know you're alluding to this before and we're talking about your career, but isn't it crazy that you tackled something that was probably the most terrifying thing for you? And then because you did that, look at your life now and all the experiences you've had. And if you didn't do that, maybe it wouldn't have happened just because you like tackled that fear as well. That's amazing to hear.
Well, there's a phrase that I studied, intellectual history in college, and there was a phrase by Kierkegaard that was he said most people live lives of quiet desperation, and I thought to myself, how depressing is that? I don't want to be that guy who wakes up at 40, 45 years old and is like, am I a banker? Broker. I'm doing it to please my dad. I'm miserable. Don't want to be married to this woman. Blah, blah, blah. And I thought to myself, that would be the worst thing in the world. Maybe I go and I crash and burn, but I cannot live a life of by desperation. And so I knew I was going to do something. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would involve any performative skills by me. I thought maybe I'd be a writer or something, or a painter. But regardless, maybe those other professions would have forced me to a similar place where I had to kind of grow a certain level of confidence. Maybe that is.
Mm.
But this was a crash course.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
like
it was.
saying, "Hey, I'm scared of heights, so cool." They're strapping a parachute to you and shoving you out of an airplane.
Yeah.
It's high speed learning. And by the way, I would recommend everyone, everyone would benefit going to an acting class or a comedy improv class.
Same.
It's one of the greatest things you can do. It's so freeing, and it shakes you out of it shakes you out of your box. I mean, you forget how locked in we are. We are locked into things. And comedy improv in particular will get you out of your comfort zone really, really
Really.
fast.
That's happened
And
with me.
yeah, I was at the Groundlings,
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
yeah, and Will Ferrell was there, and Will Ferrell at the time was like not famous, and the guy literally everything he did was funny. Everything he did was funny, and I don't think he understood that how funny we all thought he was. Like he would just do something, and we'd be like, "That's fucking great. I hope this guy's serious about doing what he wants." You
Yeah.
know, and and it's to be able to create something and it have value in people's lives is one of the most privileged things you can do in life. And whether that's writing a book or painting or being a therapist, I don't know what it is, but to be able to do something that provides value to somebody is an incredibly privileged place to be in society. And that's the way I look at it. And that's coming full circle from the my parents thought acting was ridiculous. They didn't understand it.
Yep.
I was 20 years old and I was working in the White House and I was very serious about my resume and I would go and work at the bank every summer or a campaign every summer. I was building my resume and I was going to be somebody, and they like that. They love that. And then
Mm.
when I quit all that and said I'm going to be an actor, they were like, "Oh my God, what is he doing?"
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I've had a chance to have the kind of karmic redemption of it all because I've sat there with some of these people that are very successful. And people thought I was on that path. I'd be that politician or that bank chairman or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
I've sat with these people and I've listened to them with their was sitting at this. I belong to this one club that is got a lot of successful people in it, both artists and businessmen. And some of these guys have known me since I was a kid, and they thought choosing acting was just the dumbest thing I could have ever done. And one of them was he was the chairman of like Bank of America.
Right.
And he was like, what? You're in a stupid profession. It's just like stupid. Like, I don't know why you're doing it. And I said, it's funny when a comic dies, the world mourns. When a musician dies, the world mourns. When an actor dies, the world mourns. When a banker dies, and he just shut up. He just shut up. I was like, at one point, we're providing value for human beings, and that you can't find the right monetary, you know, value in it, maybe, or maybe you don't see it in this hierarchical prism that you have in your head, but you're going to die and nobody's going to remember who you are. They just won't. And I'm not saying that that is the marker of a successful life, but it's revealing because it shows that you gave value to people and people appreciate that. And they're sad at your absence because you made, in whatever incremental level, their lives a little better. And I felt almost felt like, God, I might have hit that guy a little too hard over the head with that one. But, you know, it's what I thought. It's not the way I thought when I started the business, but it's what I've come to, been able to being involved in enough projects that have circulated, having enough feedback from the public that I've been able to say, wow, that's really cool. That, you know, I was with a group of Medal of Honor winners one weekend, and one guy was the youngest Medal of Honor winner, fought in Afghanistan, and he just came up to me. He goes, "I love you, man. I love your show. I watch it every day in Afghanistan." I go, he goes, "That show got me through so much crap," and
Wow.
I thought to myself, "Wow, that isn't a tremendous compliment." Because sometimes I feel ridiculous. I'm a fake soldier in a wooden fighter plane filled with styrofoam and it's all fake. And sometimes I think my life is ridiculous and fake and yours is real, but it provided this value for you at the time. How cool. You know what I mean? I don't even care if it's escapism. It's value, you know, it helped you.
I agree.
And so I feel fortunate to be able to be part of that.
You have a great take, and I also hear it as like following your heart's journey or your hero's journey or following something inside you that actually you actually want to do. I used to be an accountant. I was similar to what you were saying, like following because of parents and all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
we need accountants, that's fine, but do it if you
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
need money, you need to live and
No.
all of that
No.
stuff. But
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. And, I wish I heard advice like that as well because it's so important.
Well, it's
Yeah.
also tricky because you also do have to make money to survive.
Mm.
I've got 3 boys, and this is a topic of conversation at all times, where I have one kid who's he's an artist through and through. Guy's an artist through and through. He's a creative person. And I'm like, you need to pursue creative things. And you may not get the recognition you deserve. And just know that it's a noble pursuit. And in some ways, the people that don't get recognized, it's even more noble a pursuit because it's that much more intense and difficult.
Mm.
But what you're doing is important. The world needs creative people. They need people that see the world differently. They need people that design clothes that they've never seen or do pictures the way nobody's seen or, make a movie or read a poem or make music and all these things. The world needs these people more than ever.
I agree. It changes something, whether it's your consciousness or how you see the world. Just seeing something a little bit different can plant a seed for something massive, longer term.
But I think this prism that it's not coincidental that you're doing a show about failure, and nothing can be more fraught with failure than a creative life.
Yep,
If you're going to see your success and failure in terms of your impact on society, if you are, because I don't think it's a good measure. I think you have to always do things first. You have to ask yourself, would I be happy if I'm not doing this? And if the answer is yes, then fine. But if you have to paint or you have to make music, then pursuing that is perfectly logical. And you have to first do it for your own satisfaction. And if you do it well enough and you have the capacity to be able to share it and the luck and the privilege of somebody receiving it well, that's even better. But the marker of success should be that you're doing it and satisfying yourself creatively. That should be 80% of the whole equation.
I agree.
And it does not mean it covers rent, but it means that it covers rent on your soul.
Agreed. I think that's
Yeah.
so important. You've answered the question of the podcast. I can retire now. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I want to also tie in a few things because we brought up Stargate as well, and this ties into everything you're saying as well. And markers of success and putting yourself out there. This I find very unique because a lot of people don't know this, just in general about actors. But I think you'd done maybe 12 or 13 pilots beforehand, and that never went ahead. I want to know, what are you thinking at the time when you record a pilot? You put in effort into this, and it doesn't go ahead, and then you do another one, then you do another one, and it keeps on going on. How do you still say, motivated or inspired? And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I don't know that I saw it in those terms. I just knew that I was having more children. They were entering my life. I was like, there are more mouths to feed.
Yep.
I must do something. And statistically speaking, if you're doing that many pilots at the time, if you do pilots like that every year, like I did, that means you're always on the cusp of something, you know,
Yeah.
like something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Just wait for it. But after that long of a time, that was pretty disheartening.
Mm.
And the last final one that I was stuck on was really a great show. It was really well done. And to this day, I'm very proud of it. And they held me under contract for a year and a half, even though they know it wasn't going as a show. And I was like, this is really not fair. I'm unable to make money. I mean, I can't work for anybody else. They're not letting
Is
me
this the
go.
holding deal that you had, like a famous holding deal?
Well, every time you do a pilot, you're under contract. And then what happens is they decide whether it goes, and they can also decide they don't know if it's going to go, and they can extend your contract. Meaning
wow.
they're not paying you, but they're extending your hold. Most of the time they didn't exercise that, but this one they did, and I was really just crushed for money. Man, I had always been able to make enough money to survive. And this is the first time where I was like, this is crippling. Not allowed to work anywhere. And I know they're not going to pick up this show. And I wish they'd let us go. And they wouldn't. And so when Stargate came along, they said, my manager called me and said, hey, I had dinner with the president of MGM. They've got this show called Stargate Atlantis. They're going to launch it. It's guaranteed for like 2 seasons. And I talked you up. I thought you'd be good for the role. Are you interested? And I said, well, we just got released from this contract. And I said, it's on for 2 seasons? I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but I can't do science fiction television. I don't think I can do it. I don't know if I'm good enough actor, like Star Trek, that stuff. That's difficult stuff, and I just don't know that I have it in me. And they said, no, apparently that Stargate is not as serious as Star Trek. It sounds star this, star that, Battlestar, Star Trek, Stargate. It's for those of us that weren't in the science fiction world, there's a lot of confusion about what is what.
Yeah.
And they said, no, they actually want a character that it does its own thing. So you don't wear crazy clothes and you don't put prosthetics on and you don't, or you're not really serious all the time, whatever. They said, just try it out, see what you want, see what you can do. And I said, okay, well, if I'm in space, if I'm doing this, I'm basically, the way I read it, I'm kind of like Han Solo, I guess, it makes sense to me. And I've always liked Harrison Ford, and I always thought, well, at a different time in life, I feel like I could have done all of Harrison Ford's roles. And and so I just went and did it, and I got the job. And I thought, okay, that's cool. But my agent said, don't do it. You don't want to get stuck on science fiction television. Don't do it. And I was like, what? They're like, don't worry, something's going to come along, but once you go down science fiction television, they're not going to take you seriously anymore. This is like old school. Old school was like, their movies, they were different than television. And then television, you had award-winning television, and then you had a bunch of crap. And they thought this is crap. And they thought I would be doing Emmy-nominated sort of television at all time. And do they know what it's like being an actor married with 2 kids? Like, I mean, I was like, no, I have to do this. So it was interesting how we felt differently about the whole thing. And I'm glad I chose it because
I think that's
it
also
sends you on a different path in life. Yeah.
Definitely.
Go
And
ahead.
good on you. I know there's obviously the money factor as well, but if you read the script and it was terrible, you could have said no afterwards. But good on you for actually doing something when your agent tells you not to. I know there's a few stories with agents, and we can maybe get into it. This tying back into this as well about sticking to your guns, for example. I believe on the first day of shooting, you played it exactly how you played it in the audition, and you get a call. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, I don't know if it was the first day. I think it was like maybe the second week or something. Like we had shot enough. We had shot like about a week, and there was a deep concern that I was cast in LA by MGM. The show is run by some guys in Canada, and they're Canadians. As I found out, they did not want me for the show. They never did. They wanted this Canadian people. And MGM goes, no, we're taking him, and we own the show. And that's what we're going to do. And so they were kind of overridden. So I kind of walked into somewhat of a challenging situation where, and it's not that they didn't want me or like me, it's that in their minds, they wanted to have the decision making to be theirs. They didn't want to be told what to do. Mm. And so they had come off of this was after 7 years of Stargate SG-1. And Richard Dean Anderson was the star of Stargate SG-1. I'm sure people know that. And he played it in the most idiosyncratic way possible. Like, it's actually incredible. If you look at the movie and you look at the show, I mean, they're totally different characters. I credit Rick for the success of Stargate. I credit him because he made it so kind of quirky and unpredictable that people kind of stopped and they were like, what's going on here? Like, what is this show? And his quirkiness and his unpredictability was something that it really, I think, built an audience. Now, for some of these writers, they felt like he wasn't taking their material seriously enough. And to be honest, he wasn't. It really wasn't. It was not. He would get a script and like, I'm not saying this, I'm not saying that, I'm blah, blah, blah. And he was also a producer. And I think there was a sense of frustration. Yeah. And I think they wanted to dispense of the kind of super quirky character that took nothing seriously. And they wanted to make my character different. They wanted me to take things very seriously because that's what they needed. I think the way I viewed it was, I get what you're saying. I'm going to take the situation seriously, but I'm not going to take myself seriously.
Oh, I like that.
You know,
that's more enjoyable.
And actually, what's funny, the truth is, we did this 15 years before Guardians of the Galaxy. And Guardians of the Galaxy, basically, it does what we did. I mean, that was our MO. We were like, the situation's serious. We could all die. I'm really hungry. Do we have anything to eat? You know, it's like there's always a mix of urgency and comedy.
Yep.
And
I love that personally.
And I thought that was the right balance to strike. They did not. They did not think that was the right balance to strike. It was ironic because this is the way I read it in an audition. And so you go back to the 12 pilots. I did 12 pilots. Okay. So at the time, I had seen entire pilots destroyed by these suggestions. And sometimes they were well-meaning suggestions. They'd be from the director or producer or from a network executive, and you want to be as receptive as possible to what they want. So you're trying to do what they want, and you end up just destroying everything. Because a lot of times you're being asked to give up your instincts and supplant somebody's desires for your character.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm never doing that again. I made a decision after like 11 or 12 pilots to never do that again. I was like, I have an instinct for a character. That's the way I want to play it. I'm totally open to being directed different ways, but not in terms of the character. Okay. Otherwise, go cast somebody else or something or whatever.
Because then you can get anyone and you're replaceable and it's not you. And it's also not allowing you to flourish in the way that you can flourish. Yep.
Yeah. So I thought that if my character wasn't self-deprecating, it would just make the show kind of maybe heavier and maybe a little more intolerable and maybe a little too arrogant. I think I looked at Stargate as people having fun on these adventures, um, and so self-deprecation to me was self-deprecation to me is a great quality on a lot of characters. You can get away with a lot, and I felt strongly about playing it. And my manager called me and said they're not happy with what you're doing and like what's going on. They're not happy with the way I read the freaking character. And I said, hey, I don't know what to do. If they don't want that, they can go cast somebody else. They go, they can't cast somebody else. They're already shooting. I go, I'm not changing this. I'm not changing this. I go, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I've done a lot of television already. I know what I'm doing. And I know when I can't give up my instinct. Open to suggestions, but I know when you're asking me to override my instincts on a character, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it. And there was a real chill in the air. You know, mind you, they're in for about $120 million the first season. So
Whoa.
this it's not exactly like, hey, this is like, oh, he just has a different opinion. People are like, Grr. And then we broke all like every ratings record that ever occurred in cable television. So nobody ever said anything after that.
Isn't that a
I
funny?
Well, I don't say that to say, look, I told you I was right. It's not that. It's more like, hey, I understand your fear. I understand the money being placed. I understand your anxiety, but I know what the fuck I'm doing. So calm down, relax, sit back, and I'll do it. You know, that's a different thing
I
than I
agree.
told you so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that sense of self-confidence, you do eventually have to have it for all success. There's a time when you're just going to have to say, I have instincts and I know what they are, and I'm going to follow these instincts. And so that was a time where I thought it worked out well. I think if I had done what they asked, I think I would, I think, I don't know, the show may have done okay, but I don't think it would have, the chemistry would be totally different with all the other characters.
I
Uh,
agree, and I think
yeah.
it speaks to everyone, regardless if you're an actor or not, to honor your intuition, to honor what's actually speaking to you, because then who's it just doesn't make sense to me from a creative pursuit as well, but also in life. And I like how obviously it would have been very tense, but I like how once it's out, you break all these records, no one says anything like, "Oh, he knew," and you didn't need to say, "I told you so," like you said. But I think that's also really important, where they're like, "Oh yeah, we love his choices. This was amazing. We always wanted him to do that." Was it like that, or
Well,
was it just never?
there was definitely a lot of self-congratulatory stuff going on but I was used to that. I was like, listen, the show goes well, everybody says it's because of them. The show goes badly, they
Yeah,
blame you.
yeah,
That's how that works out. And so it's not like I haven't experienced that before. And so I was expecting a certain amount of that. But again, I'm not trying to make it like, oh, look at me, I was right. What I do understand also is that writers write characters and they are attached to those characters and they have it in their head what that character is going to do and say and how he's going to behave. And then you come in and interpret it and it may be different than what they're kind of imagining. And once you do it and once it goes out there, then your interpretation of that character becomes reality. And then they start writing for your character that you own. When you're shooting a pilot, there's a struggle over who owns that character.
yeah,
I own the character. I created that character in my office, and it took me 8 months to create your character. And so I know the character better than you do. And you're like, okay, maybe you do, but there's a reason you're not playing that character, and I am.
yeah,
So if you want to be an actor, be an actor. Or don't cast somebody. It's a totally legitimate thing. Don't cast somebody you think is off base. But it gets trickier when you cast somebody and say, that's not how I want to do it. And anyways, the point is it all worked out. And so I harbored no ill feelings about the thing, and it just goes to show you I do understand their anxiety. I do understand their sense of propriety over those characters initially, and I also wasn't willing to give up my instincts. I had just gotten done with a pilot a few years earlier
The
that
Disney
had
sitcom?
no, it was a pilot that I did with Arnold Copelson called Sherman's March. It was like literally one of the hottest scripts in all of Hollywood television that year. Everybody's like, you get to do Sherman's March and you're Sherman? I was like, yes. And it turned out terribly. And it turned out terribly because we listened to too many people and made too many adjustments. We are just there to please everybody. Nobody, yeah. So
I, yep.
I was like, I'm not doing that anymore.
I think that's really important about sticking to your guns, as I was saying before. And you had that example as well. I think there
Yeah.
was a Disney sitcom as well where there was a bit of sabotage from.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about that? Because I'm seeing a theme of everything we've spoken about how you sticking to your guns, things work out, whether the show goes ahead or not. But it's about you like being true to yourself in a respectful way. Like you
Yeah.
talked about with Stargate that you saw their concerns. You understand that it wasn't you being a diva and just doing whatever you wanted. But the key lesson is sticking to your guns, which is an important life lesson for all.
Oh, you have to be always open to dialogue, open to criticism. And then sometimes the criticism is just off base. Sometimes, there's so many things that go into a show. I can watch a show and I could be like, those are great actors, and nothing is working because the damn director didn't shoot any close-ups. It's all these masters that everything is lost, and so it's not their fault. A lot of people can't watch. A studio executive will watch it and be like, I don't know, it's boring, and I don't like the actors. And I'm like, no, it's not the actors. You need to shoot it differently. So I can break things down that way. It does not mean everybody can.
Mm.
As far as the Disney pilot, that was a very interesting and disturbing experience. Everybody's going to get fired once, probably. And if you have a career in Hollywood, you would probably get fired once.
Everyone I've spoken to multiple times. Yeah.
I got hired to be the star of a 30-minute multi-camera sitcom, which is, sort of obsolete these days. But it's like that whole thing, like set up, punchline, audience laughs. Like everybody loves Raymond. It's that type of stuff. And I didn't think I was right for that type of stuff, but I went in and read for it, and they seemed to think I was right. And I had to deal with Disney, and they were like, "Cool, let's do this." And I kept saying, and I knew that the writer and creator didn't want me. He wanted, he did not picture. He pictured himself as the main character, and he was like a short Jewish guy. And I think in his head, he wanted a short Jewish guy who was an actor.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's not Joe. And I don't want this. This is making my show different. And so I was like, okay. I kept calling. I got cast like right away. And I had like 6 weeks between the time I got cast and the table read. And I kept calling every week. Hey, do you got any rewrites? You got anything? What's going on? And nothing. Everything's fine, Joe. Don't worry about it. We'll tell you about the table read. Table read's coming up. I go, hey, you got any revisions? Nothing. Everything's the same. Don't worry about it, Joe. We'll see you. I get to the table read, and they hand me a totally different script.
Brutal.
A page, as we call a page one rewrite. And so I'm sitting there, and if I were the person I am today, it would have been easier. I would have stopped everything and said, hello, I asked for this, and you guys told me there was no rewrites, and I'm seeing this for the first time. I don't think that's cool, and I don't want to be reading for this. Because everybody goes, that's a table read. It's no, you don't need to do performance. Bullshit. Anytime Hollywood says, oh, yeah, don't worry, you don't have to memorize your lines, and it's not a performance. Nonsense. They're judging you all the time.
Yep.
They're judging you all the time. So I do a page one rewrite, and I'm reading this, and I haven't even seen these lines. So I'm saying these things. It's not working out. I'm not getting the laughs, nor should I. And I walk out of that, and I was like, God damn, that was brutal. I was like, what's up with this? They're like, oh yeah, sorry about that. Some late revisions. And the creator and director had purposely sabotaged me. And I wasn't sophisticated enough to understand that.
Yep.
And I wasn't sophisticated enough to defend myself. And, I really wasn't. I was too much of a kid to understand that somebody would do that to you.
Yeah.
And so I sat there with some confusion, and I even asked Disney, like, whoa, what's up with that? They're like, don't worry, everything's fine. And then they called the next day, they go, no, that's not going to work out. And I didn't even, I should have explained myself. And I think later I did. It didn't matter. It was what it was, and it's the way it worked out. And the show, their show version of the show, tested horribly, so I felt somewhat, I felt somewhat redeemed by it. And then I ended up doing a different pilot that, tested much higher. So I felt like, all right, I'm redeemed. It didn't bury my career or anything.
You come in, you're like pure, you want to do the best job you can. You don't think of all of these like negatives. And there is like a dark side of Hollywood, obviously not the dark side that I'm thinking of, where people have their own agendas. And we've heard agents try and screw you, managers do certain things. And obviously you wouldn't understand that because you don't think like that, especially at the time. You don't have the vocabulary because you haven't had that experience. And now with life experience, you could see, oh, that person was trying to do something wrong by me.
Yeah.
And that's really hard mentally even to figure out what's going on. So when you
Yeah.
get that call and say you're fired, you can't necessarily defend yourself because you're processing what's happened. You're like, what the hell has just happened?
Yeah. This is the most difficult area for me to give advice to my kids on as they go through the workplace, which is this sabotage that occurs. In every competitive field, there's a group of people trying to really sabotage you. You kind of think to yourself, no, I mean, there are rules and we do the rules and the best person wins. No, there's people that actually are busy at work, sort of trying to screw you. And I don't know that I've ever fully kind of reconciled that experience because I still think it was so immoral and fucked up. And I just wish that I was more of, I was a boy, but I'm a man now. As a man, I would have just stopped everything and said, look, you don't want me. That's fine. Don't hand me the script. I'm not reading it right now. That's what I would have done.
Yeah.
And I would have called him out. And then it would have kind of been his problem. And so I'm trying to advise, I have a son, he's a producer at a pretty major news news network. And he's been promoted. He does very well. He's very smart. And he's also he's a kid. He's a kid. So he doesn't sometimes he doesn't his head is not in a place where somebody's going to mess with him. And sometimes it does happen. And I find this to be the hardest area to give him advice because I don't want to make him defensive. I don't want to make him paranoid. I don't want him to lose his optimism and his good cheer and goodwill. And so I tend to say, look, you work hard and you're good to people and you're kind to people and you deliver a good product, you'll eventually do fine. There are events that take place that are unexplainable. I'm not sure it's good for you to become paranoid.
Agreed. And that's great life advice. And, potentially with you, for example, maybe that's what transitioned you a bit more into manhood and it was lower stakes. Whereas maybe if it happened maybe now or 10 years ago, whatever the time, and it could have been a bit more dire. So you kind of had that life experience before. I know with me, very long story short, I sold a script. I was about to sell a script, and the email exchanges and the conversations each time was different, or they'd try and take things out of a contract. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I'll give them benefit of the doubt. And then this kept on happening. And my dad was actually advising me at the time. Thank God I had him. And I quickly learned, like, oh, not everyone in the world, but especially this industry, has the best intention, want to get the best art out there. And then by the time we started to the very end, you're like, okay, I understand what's going on. But it was very hard to process. And I'm grateful for the experience now because luckily it was my thing and I've kept it, and I didn't like sell a show and then have no involvement. So I think it's just life experience. that, you know, for
It is
example,
life
yeah,
experience, and they're touchy scenarios, and so each thing is a little different, and sometimes it's not as easy as sometimes sometimes you can't call it out.
yeah, and you
You
can't
can't
even
call it out.
process it. You might, yeah,
Right. But if you call something out that not everybody sees, it makes you look crazy. And so you get into this complicated situation. And yeah, I think I've learned, when I worked in the White House, I dealt with a lot of pretty dark motives and
of course,
subterfuge and some pretty dark personalities and the way they treat other people. And so it wasn't like I was ignorant that these things had happened. I guess I looked at Hollywood. A lot of people were like, Hollywood's tough business. And I thought, Hollywood seems like a charity softball game to me. It's it's nothing like that's hardcore when you go to the upper echelons of politics. And but there is darkness there. And so I guess that was a little reawakening. And then cut to a number of years later where I had an idea that was stolen verbatim. It was stolen from me. And I had a house guest, and the house guest came to me and he said, "Hey, listen, I think something's screwed up. That idea you had, that a script you had with your friend, well, I was talking to a friend of mine about it because I thought it was such a great idea. And I just found out they sold it."
oh my god, that's my worst
And
nightmare.
I said, "God damn it, this is interesting." I said, you know what? We'll work it out. We'll figure it out. It's not like the first time that's happened in Hollywood. Sure enough, this guy, I mean, he really did steal it verbatim. And we had the link when he talked to his friend and the whole thing.
Oh my
And
god.
I had to hire a lawyer. And I first reached out to the guy and I said to him, I believe that you have my idea, and how do you want to handle this? And he said, he was very rude, and he was like, "Go fuck yourself. It's my idea, and I'm not gonna do anything." I go, "Listen, I just want to tell you something. I'm busy on a TV show. I can't really do this anyways. I'll give you a deal. Me and my friend will give you a deal. We'll give you a percentage of it. You move forward with it. We've got jobs. But if you don't want to do that, that's a pretty damn good deal."
Sort of taking it away, yeah.
Yeah, and he still wouldn't do it. And so I said, "Look, uh, I can get this thing destroyed like in a day." He said, "No, you can't. Who the hell are you?" I go, "Well, you just made a deal with NBC. I'm on a show at NBC. I have a development deal at NBC. I had a meeting at NBC about this specific project that you sold. It's on the books. Um, I could call right now and get it taken out." He goes, "You can't do anything. You're a nobody." And so he left me with no choice.
Yeah,
And
of
I
course.
think 3 hours later, the whole thing was destroyed. And then he tried to countersue me. And I just thought to myself, that's not, I tried to give you a lifeline, dude. Tried to give you some help. And we could have benefited from you taking the show. Like
Yeah.
we're busy. And so navigating personal politics, navigating tricky, complex people is every single person in every single business has endless epic stories
I
about
know.
these personal navigational issues. And so there's nothing new in Hollywood. Um,
But
and
still,
so,
it's something that you've, you know, discussed, you've worked through. That almost sort of happened with me as
yeah.
well. And that is the worst feeling. I know you're on a show, so you've got the comfort there. But not you, the other guy, such a man of such low integrity as well, to do something like that as well. It's not a comfortable
Well,
position for you to
I
be.
think that's what you learn, though. You learn that integrity is not, it's not the norm. It might be the aberration. And, I think there's a reason a lot of us become artists because we see the world, we're frustrated by the world. We see that, we're lesser versions of ourselves and we could be. And that's part of the storytelling process. And each story is essentially about us having various failings and trying to overcome those failings. And so I think we see the world differently. And ruthless business tactics are not my cup of tea. I didn't really understand those. My dad came from a business background. He could probably talk to me all day long about them. But when you're a creative type, it's just not in your kind of wheelhouse. Like you think that you're like, that's kind of why I'm not in business.
Yeah. I know, I get that.
So, yeah.
Well, that's crazy. Going back to what you were just saying before, trust and integrity is the most important thing for me when I want to collaborate with someone or just work with people. And going through your experience and my experience, we learned that. So I think that's really important. I want to just tie up a few things before we go. I want to know what it's like when you've been in a hugely successful show like Stargate Atlantis, and you think it's going to go on for another 5 years, and then it gets cancelled. How do you deal with that? Because there's family, like they're your family. You put in so many hours, time, energy. You've seen everything. You've probably seen people's kids grow up, get married, all of that stuff, and
Yeah.
then it just comes to a halt.
Well, there's a part of you that's very tired and exhausted. So you're kind of like, it'd be nice to have time off. It's, maybe the less rational side of you. When your accountant is crying, you should probably pay attention. And so,
Yeah.
see, we do need accountants. I felt it was the way it was handled, I think, that bothered me. It was there. We went down to San Diego Comic-Con and did our yearly thing, and I was asked, "How do things look for year 6?" And the question was directed at me, and I said, "I think by all indications, our ratings are higher than ever. Show's making money, so yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't come." I'm on stage with 2 other executive producers who know the show has already been canceled, and they haven't told me. And it was really frustrating because I asked, I said, I later said, why didn't you tell me? I don't think that's right. And one person argued, well, we were afraid none of you guys would come to work. What? We're professionals, for Christ's sake. Of course, we're going to come to work.
Yeah.
But what is the purpose of not being honest to us? And I guess they thought somehow it would get to be, I don't know, too difficult. I don't understand any of it. Like, we're all adults. It's canceled. It's canceled. We got to deal with it. Um, and so I was told later that it was canceled, and that was after, I had already stuck my neck out telling everybody it wasn't going to be canceled, but more kind of perhaps insidiously, I had to have another contract for the following 5 years, right? So I was due to make a very significant amount of money in year 6. When I renegotiated my contract, they're like, we're going to get you that money, but let's do it in year 6 because like we finalized certain things. I think they just knew the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that thing where it's like, man, I'm just not a ruthless businessman. And had I known, I would have demanded more money in years 3, 4, and 5. Um, and so I have a little bit of bitterness about that. I don't believe it's the right way to handle things.
Low integrity
I
from what we're saying as well, especially given all the things you said. Not you, them.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, we get along fine, and they have their own particular reasons for doing it. I'm sure they don't see it that way. But in the pursuit of in the pursuit of avoiding conflict, you actually mitigate or you compromise integrity. Then that's a problem. So what it is a deeply culturally, Canadians are non-confrontational. Americans are like, we're a little loud. We confront people.
Yeah.
They, you know, are very non-confrontational in a way that like they could avoid things like if it's difficult. They're just like, I'm just going to avoid it. And like, I'm just going to walk away. And I feel like it was a little bit of that. And I just didn't think it was fair to anybody. And then we got into a more complex issue, which they said, but don't worry, we're doing a bunch of movies. And those movies are going to finish the seasons. They're going to do things that fans will understand. So then they were like, we want you to support the new TV show, Stargate Universe. Well, Stargate Universe, I said, I called up the president of MGM TV and I said, could you tell me a time when a spinoff succeeded without the mother show? And he couldn't. I go, there's a reason why you haven't seen any success there. Because you can't cancel the mother show and spin it off simultaneously. It doesn't work that way.
The audience to trickle down.
You need the audience, and that is, in fact, a transitional period for an audience. Don't ask me why they did the way they did. They claimed MGM went bankrupt. They had issues. I don't know what the issues were. And nonetheless, the way they set it up, don't worry, we're doing these movies and the movies will be good and they'll be lucrative and they'll fill in for not doing the show. They won't be as good as the show financially, but they're sizable, and so you'll be good. You'll survive, you know. And so we thought we would do doing those, and we kept telling the audience, you know, we're traveling around the world signing autographs, giving interviews and stuff, and we're like, oh, don't worry, we're going to do this movie and you'll be good. Yeah. And you know, hey, they're doing this new show, who knows, it might be good. And the whole time they knew that they weren't really going to do this.
I hate that.
And so well, there's a reason why I don't understand any of it. I'm at a loss as to why people do things they do. And I guess every comedy starts with somebody making a decision that's sort of not a good decision. And then it's a domino effect with all these other things. And sometimes it comes down to just cowardice, you know. And I think in this place it was. There's a couple people that would argue that they thought they were doing the movie and they didn't know. And they blame it on the studio, and the studio knew exactly what was going on, and they were the ones sort of lying to us. And I think there's some truth to that. I'm not saying it's like the producers here, but remember, those producers knew I was getting canceled, and I'm sitting up in front of 8,000 people telling them, no, we'll see you next year. And so I just think that there's different ways to do things, and I've always, you learn everything from raising kids, right? I'm like, I wouldn't do that to my kids. Yeah. If something was going on, I'd tell them, this is what we got to deal with. So how do you want to deal with it? I just know that it's not good to not be honest. And so I don't think I don't understand. There's no benefit to it. There's just no benefit to it.
I agree. If you don't deal with it in the short term, it spirals. It gets so much bigger and you can't contain it.
Well, and I've also been involved trying to develop some stuff, produce some stuff. And I sometimes saddled with like a producing partner sometimes who wants to bullshit everybody. And I'm like, why? Yeah. I don't understand that. Just tell them like, no, we're looking for that money. We think we'll get the money when we do this, but don't tell them we have that guy when we don't even know how to pay that guy. And I go, it's okay to be honest. You know, I don't think, you know, and some successful producers might tell me I'm an idiot, and that's how they became successful. Because I think there's some truth to that. And, you know, so, but I don't know if you were going to ask me about this reboot that got canceled. Well,
it got canceled. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So there was supposed to be a reboot. And one of our writers, Martin Garrow, was going to be the showrunner and head writer and executive producer. And Martin was on our show. I think Martin's really talented, and I think he was the right guy to do it. He was nice enough to invite me into the writer's room.
I read about that. Yeah.
Which was, you know, I respect that. I was like, that's cool. And he was like, you're not on the show.
Okay.
And I don't want to give you the impression that you're on the show. We're hoping that if we get to a certain season, like the end of the first season, we can bring the other characters back. But we have to go this direction. I'm like, yeah, I get it, But thanks for I respect the process and the honesty. And I don't understand, but apparently the cancellation was because they thought it would appeal too much to our fan base.
Would appeal too much.
Yeah, Amazon executives said, we're worried about this reboot. We think it's going to appeal too much to the fan base and not to a larger, broader audience. Now, I think to myself, a larger, broader audience, the fan base is a large, broad audience, period.
That's
Okay,
crazy.
it is. It's a big audience. And second of all, they said the same thing when my show spun off. They said, we want to build a larger audience, and we did. My show was able to expand a new group of people, but we couldn't have done it without the fan base from SG1. So I don't understand it, and I think it's probably more of an excuse by an executive not to do. It was a new executive.
Yeah.
Yeah, television executives their lifespan is
Not
so
very long.
short that they can green light you. And this is funny because I told Martin, I said, you're guilty of delivering what they asked for. The problem is that the guy you delivered it for had already been fired, and you had a new executive, and what are you gonna do? There's nothing you can do. So the way it was explained was that they want to completely do like a reboot where I guess none of us are involved in any way, shape, and form, and that it's like an unrecognizable version of things. I don't totally understand it because I had talked to Jason Momoa about it. And we had at one point, he and I had agreed to go after the franchise and see if we could get it and produce it. It just so happened that Martin was ahead of us, and that was fine. I was like, Martin's probably the right person to do it. So cool, you do it. The way I would have done it, at least I would have been involved. But
yeah, because that
uh,
does.
and I'm like, what? You wouldn't want Jason Momoa in a reboot? Like, you wouldn't want him to show up, or that's like could like
Even for an
dwindle your
episode,
audience or
yeah,
something?
your audience, it seems like a very strange decision.
Listen, to have our audience alone without an expansion of the audience would be a great economic thing, regardless. You could do very well with just the fan base, but I think
Agreed.
it would grow, especially the way streaming works these days. The capacity to expand your audience is unbelievable. I will tell you that I receive more residuals now than I did 15 years ago.
Oh, that's
Now,
awesome.
how many people on shows can say that?
Mm.
I can't say it. And that's because of streaming reaching out to so many people.
And you get even like the younger audience as well. What's this show? I've heard about this show. This is an icon. It's a no brainer.
It's a no-brainer, and the fact that the audience has grown significantly since the end of the show is a very unusual pattern, and it's one that should be paid attention to. If a television executive is doing their homework and they say, "Oh yeah, that show did that," and now its audience is significantly larger just since we've been streaming it, then you might want to think about bringing it back. They did this with a couple shows recently, right?
Mm.
Did like Suits like get
And it has the
reborn?
audience. It has.
Yeah. So I don't understand it.
I'm just thinking of
Yeah.
Manifest. I don't know if it was a network show and it did pretty well. Then it got cancelled and then went on Netflix years later. And they're like, okay, just going to continue from
Yeah.
where we left off, and hugely popular. And especially when you got that audience, it's a no brainer. Any last thoughts on that before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you? I know you put blood, sweat, and tears in the show. You, as you said, you're trying to produce the show, get it made. Any last thoughts or?
Well, I do think, and I should probably be more involved in this. There's a whole campaign to save the Stargate reboot, and I should probably get more involved in that. They did a protest in Times Square, protest at Amazon Studios. It's circulated quite a bit, and I should probably get more involved in that. And I do think that they eventually will listen. There's enough people out there clamoring for something, they will listen.
Yeah, I agree.
The question is, how do you get it in a format to show an executive that they need to be listening? They're paying attention to a whole host of things, and what is brought to their attention, I'm not entirely sure all the time.
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be someone out there that can figure it out, whether it's a petition might not work anymore, or you just get a lot of people. I don't know. Someone out there figure it out. It would be great to get it out.
Who knows? We'll see. I'm not giving up hope. I'm not giving up hope. Yeah.
Amazing. Before we go, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you, and all of that jazz?
Well, okay, interesting. I don't really use Facebook, and I don't really use X. And a lot of people ask me, you're on X or Facebook, and I go, no, those are probably not me. There's a lot of fake. Apparently, there's a lot of pretenders out there that claim they're me, and it's not me. I only do Facebook, Instagram, and it's Joe Flanigan Official. And I went through a period there of being pretty politically outspoken. And you might find me back in that place. I did work as a political consultant in the last election. And I will probably be involved again. I think we're at a pretty interesting time in our society, and I'm not going to sit quietly by and watch our country slide into despair. So that's why I'm so heartened by the World Cup.
I love it. I love it. Great message for everyone. Yeah, the World Cup.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'll put that in the episode. Oh, no, go on.
Yeah, no. So I think a lot of people aren't aware of how politically active I am. I've been doing political consulting for a fair amount of time, since like 2016, since Trump entered our public sphere. I found that to be disheartening and frightening. And it's only kind of evolved into even more nightmarish scenarios than I had anticipated. So I felt obligated to get involved, and I've been involved quite a bit. So
cool. I'll put that all in the episode notes below, especially the Instagram. I'll see if I can find the official Facebook as well. Thank you so much. You've lived a very interesting life. You're very inspiring and empowering, and I really enjoyed the lessons that you've learned from all of your experiences. And yeah, thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully there's some value to what I've said.
There's heaps.
All right. I thank you so much.
I love how Joe talks about being incredibly shy as a young adult, and by recognizing that it was holding him back and limiting the life he wanted to live, he made a choice to do something about it. He stepped into an acting class despite the very real fear of being laughed at, judged, or ridiculed. That single decision changed the course of his life. What I love most about this is Joe didn't take the class because he thought he'd become an actor, but because he simply wanted to grow. And that's the beautiful part. By showing up, he discovered something he never could have predicted. People saw something in him. They encouraged him. They planted the seed that maybe acting was something he could pursue. None of that would have happened if he let fear make the decision for him. There's a quote that says, "Everything you want is on the other side of fear." Joe's story is a beautiful reminder that sometimes that the biggest reward isn't getting what you expected, it's discovering possibilities you never knew existed because you were brave enough to take the first step. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy and life.